A woman is in pain. The car drives through the streets at extreme speed, while Nariman shouts to Yilmaz, her husband, to speed up. He tries at the same time to calm down and hurry up to support his wife, but his attempts are failing considerably. Meanwhile, a couple is in an appointment with the obstetrician, who says the baby is doing fine, despite concerns that he's not moving. Insai and her husband are leaving the hospital, relieved, when suddenly Yilmaz, in his manic attempt to speed up the car and get to the hospital as quickly as possible, is unable to brake in time and crashes into their car. The agitation is such that it induces Insai's labor. The two women are then hastily brought into the hospital, screaming in pain, and the staff rushes to get them in the labor room while they have their husbands at their sides. Yilmaz and Insai's husband admire the babies in the nursery. Yilmaz takes a picture, happy about the birth of his son, and tells Insai's husband that he will send a copy of the picture. Time goes by. These little babies grew up. Deniz rushes through Istanbul's streets while talking to her boyfriend about the upcoming dinner with his parents. In another conversation, Özgür tells his mother about an upcoming event and promises to dispatch someone to pick her up. The Centrum Productions sign is displayed behind the receptionists as Deniz enters the space and grins as she approaches one of them. She claims she was there to take a test run for a movie. Meanwhile, Onur, Özgür's friend, talks to a client and is relieved when Özgür arrives and welcomes everyone. The client, Ice, claims she has always wished to encounter him. Then, Onur instructs them to begin conversing while he goes to pick up Özgür's mother. Deniz is welcomed by the producers, who then ask her to introduce herself. Özgür did the same thing with his client during their discussion. Ice asks some excellent inquiries and shows a genuine desire to learn more about Özgür. Deniz appears to be the ideal candidate for the producers based on her audition. She goes to dinner with her boyfriend's parents after the audition is over. Özgür appears in a gallery filled with photographs as his mother Nemriz enters and gives him a joyful embrace. Deniz converses with Barak's parents over supper, and Barak's mother expresses her gratitude for Deniz's decision to give up acting because it wasn't the best choice for a family life. Deniz desperately tries to change the topic as she casts a suspicious glance at Barak. She explains to Barak's mother that she hadn't given up on acting and that she had even gone to an audition that day and had a decent chance of being called. She heads to the bathroom to answer her phone when it rings. Deniz complains to a friend in the restroom, on the phone, about Barak's mother letting escape some derogatory remarks about the woman. She simply did not anticipate Burak's mother showing up out of the blue. Deniz attempts to calm things down by shutting her mouth, but it doesn't work. The harm had already been done. Deniz asks Burak what she can do to fix it while they are in the vehicle. What's done, he claims, is done. She inquires furiously as to why he misled them. Deniz attempted to argue that she may have a once-in-a-lifetime chance, but Barak claims she didn't know what she was doing with acting and that she always claimed that. Angered, he inquires as to when she will lead the life she has promised. Deniz points out that he was the cause of so many missed chances, and Barak inquires as to whether Deniz was suggesting that he was to blame for her failure. Even though she was driving, Deniz recognizes that he believes she was a failure, and becomes so angry that she exits the vehicle. Her heel breaks, but she continues to pace furiously, only wanting to get away from her partner as Burak yells her name. In a stroke of fate, she finds a poster for a photography exhibition and thinks it looked like her when she was a child. Quickly, she enters the place, deciding to see more about it, but Barak keeps calling and makes her have to go out to talk to him. At that same moment, Özgür gives a speech about his father and thanks everyone for coming. Barak, back in the car with Deniz, asks them not to get separated. He was going to Russia and he wanted them to be okay. Deniz is cold and says that she needed to talk to him if Barak had the same concern as his parents, but he hurriedly assures her that she didn't and asks her for a kiss. Deniz doesn't look convinced and gets out of the car, heading straight for the house. Her roommate, Zeynep, is watching television when the actress storms into the room, babbling about what had happened that day. Deniz shows the child's photo at the exhibition and says she thinks it's her. Elsewhere, Özgür's mother asks him to stop by his father's shop before it is rented out, and he assures her that she would. Nariman hugs him and says his father would be very proud. At home, Deniz calls his mother asking if she had a photo taken at a place called Turgut when she was a child, but gets no response. Özgür is at the bar with his friend, but he feels sick, and his heart starts beating very fast. Ornu rescues him, holding him and taking him home. Ornu even begs to remain with him, but Özgür dismisses his friend by telling him he's fine. The guy, who is worn out, leans against the table and opens a drawer in his furniture. It has a paper inside that says laboratory tests, and Özgür pulls some medicine out of it. He appears to be experiencing a problem. The man recalls taking the picture as a young kid in Ankara as he examines one of the pictures of him leaning on a bicycle. When he cycles his bike home, some kids tease him, which catches the eye of a young girl. When the child Özgür comes home, his mother asks him to bring his father's lunch. Özgür ends up bumping into the people who made fun of him again, but this time, the little girl manages to distract them before they get cruel. Denise shows up at his studio in the present and requests to talk with him. She claims that she believes she is the young girl in the displayed photograph, but she is unsure because she has lost her childhood photographs. They learn that he resides close to where her grandfather did. Oscar claims he was present on the day the photograph was taken. Oscar tells her that if she wanted to come to the studio the next day, he would give her a copy of the photo, and they would have more of a chance to talk. In the past, Denise remembers when, at a dinner with her family, she decided to be an actress. She also remembers when she threw herself in front of the red bike guy to get his attention, and invited him to film a movie. The children are taken to the hospital and placed side by side on the gurney. Denise opens the curtain and asks if Oscar wants to shoot a movie with her, but his grandfather arrives before the little boy can answer. She is released, but Oscar stays. The doctor tells him that the little boy suffers from an arrhythmia in the heart and that more tests should be done to confirm the diagnosis of some cardiovascular disease. Her parents are fighting at Denise's home because she was hurt. The young girl is left under the table with her ears covered, horrified by the screams, as they yell that she shouldn't remain with her grandfather because he wasn't able to take care of her. Oscar gets a call from the hospital, in the present, informing him that they have planned a procedure and that he will need to rest for a week. The operation is set for Wednesday because there is no compelling reason to delay it. In a flashback, a young Oscar is seen declining to take his medication, leaving his mother inconsolable. The boy questions his father about what it was like to film movies. Yilmaz grins and demonstrates the fundamentals of shooting to him. The scene switches to Zeynep and Deniz at home. Her friend starts to read a part of one of Oscar's interviews where he says that he started to be interested in photography after a bicycle accident. Deniz's mouth opens in shock. She runs out to see the diary her grandfather gave her when she was a child. He said to write everything down there, and she asks if she could write about the boy on the red bike, which amuses Grandpa. She watches him curiously as he says her romance would start with an accident, and asks him what love was. The grandfather smiles and explains about racing hearts, wanting to be with the person, and wanting to always be with the person. The grown-up Deniz, in the present, cries at the memory. Another memory, this time with Oscar, unfolds. The little boy is sitting on his father's lap while the older one is also in charge of explaining to the son how the heart chooses a person. Adult Oscar looks at the photo of child Deniz and adult Deniz as he remembers his father's words. At the theater, the administrator tells the team that they will be leaving for Ankara the next day. Deniz goes to Oscar's house and sees the photo of him as a child, leaning on his red bike. Her eyes light up and she says she remembered, picks up the diary, and reads him the part that reveals her throwing herself in front of the bike on purpose. He doesn't seem to want their interaction to end because he soon offers her tea, which she readily accepts. While making tea, Oscar asks how she didn't have pictures of her when she was a child. Deniz tries to hide a distressed expression and soon replies that she lost some boxes when she moved out. He tenderly smiles at her and hands her a copy of the picture of her as a young kid. He compliments her, which causes her to try to shift the topic by inquiring about the identity of the person in the picture behind him. Oscar introduces the man as the captain and invites her to meet him because he's a fantastic cook from the neighborhood. She agrees, and the two ride off to the location on a motorcycle. They immediately get along. On the screen, Deniz as a young kid is seen waiting for the boy riding the red bicycle, with his grandfather standing next to her. He claims he would like to take her to snap a beautiful picture. Oscar the child turns on some music and starts to dance and leap. His mother says he could deliver the meal to his father. Oscar agrees without hesitation and makes his way to his father's studio and comes across Deniz. When he notices her grin, he drops the plate. He makes her smile right away, and when the grown-ups are talking outside, she steals a kiss. Deniz receives a call from Burak, asking about the audition. But the woman's anger was so great that she scoffs and says that she was at an Oscar party, and hangs up on him. Deniz returns to sit with Oscar and drinks a glass of drink at once. Oscar, amused, asks if everything was okay and she says yes. His expression darkens a little when he asks if she's been talking to her boyfriend and asks how long they've been together. She says it was too long ago. Deniz has gone over the drinking limit and tells Oscar that she was too dizzy and couldn't get on a motorcycle like that. The two call a taxi, only Deniz is so drunk that she doesn't give her address and ends up sleeping on Oscar's shoulder, who has no choice but to take her to his house. He needs to take a deep breath, feeling her body so close to his. He tries to put her clothes comfortably, tries to help her, and quickly goes to the sofa. Before he does something stupid, he sighs deeply. The situation is drastic. His heart is pounding so hard that he has to take medicine and lie down on the couch. In the past, Deniz's mother knocks on his father's door and worries when he doesn't answer. She finds him in the chair, not moving, calls his name, and the realization beats her. He wasn't breathing. His eyes fill with tears and Deniz, beside him, asks if he was sleeping. Inside doesn't have the strength to deny her daughter and just asks her to be silent. A customer goes to Yilmaz's store to report the recent death and Oscar rushes out to find Deniz. She drives off before he can catch up and leaves something metal behind. Oscar's father frames a photo of Deniz as a child in his shop, and Oscar spends years admiring her. Deniz wakes up in Oscar's apartment shocked. She doesn't have time to wake him up. She just writes a note and runs off to where the bus going to Ankara was going to leave. Running and apologizing for being late, she gets on the bus and tells Zeynep everything that happened. Orner arrives at Oscar's house, waking him up. The boy notices that Deniz has left and, agitated, asks Orner for the car. While getting ready to leave, Orner answers Oscar's phone. It was the hospital telling him to be admitted. But Oscar cancels and tells his friend that he shouldn't worry, that he didn't have any procedure. Deniz calls Barak and apologizes, embarrassed. She says that they had problems and that they had to talk to each other in person. Deniz remembers when she was a teenager and her father didn't want her to go to theater school. Yilmaz calls Oscar, now a teenager, and surprises him with a brand new camera. Oscar and his friend were itching for a guitar. Someone throws an egg on their clothes and several children start to play. Deniz is one of them. She realizes that Oscar was among the teenagers. The memory ends and Deniz spots and Oscar arrives in Ankara at the same time as the theater company arrives. They talk a little. A while later, the two are eating together, talking about the city and their experience. Deniz apologizes for having drunk too much and being a bore. Oscar drops her off at home and she invites him to the premiere. Oscar says he would go. Deniz's memory of seeing Oscar at school comes back. The girl tries to hide behind a tree but is surprised to see her father. He was with another woman who was not her mother. And to make matters worse, he kissed her. Shocked, Deniz writes in her diary. Her mother notices that something was wrong and notices that the girl was hiding something as she wrote. A family dinner emerges. Deniz, his uncles and Insai are eating and talking as they talk about her play. Deniz's mother is agitated. She takes food from the table without waiting for the others to finish, and she keeps talking about Deniz's father, which makes the woman worried. Oscar at dinner was with his mother. He remembers when he traded the camera his father gave him for a guitar. Unfortunately, another one of Oscar's episodes of fainting spells and heart trouble ensues. Insai and Deniz are in the bedroom. The oldest says that she had found her old wedding dress and that Deniz would soon marry. In the cutscene, a flashback begins. Deniz's mother had read her diary. Her father was leaving the house. They're screaming, the rooms are all overturned, and Deniz finds his mother burning all the old photos in a bathtub. It's Deniz and Oscar's birthdays and their respective parents congratulate them. Oscar goes to his father's studio and remembers when he, as a teenager, was secretly rehearsing the guitar. His dedication was great and, already grown up, he played in a band with his friend. The scene changes and Zeynep and Deniz are talking about the Burak-Orzug dilemma. Zeynep strongly believes that, as good as things are, Burak didn't really love Deniz. He didn't understand her. The woman remembers when she started in theater classes and how she was there, in a presentation, staging her play. Even Orzug was there. The play goes on and everyone applauds when it ends. Backstage, the team arrives with a cake for Deniz and sings happy birthday. She receives roses from Barak and Orzug smiles at her as she enters backstage. Deniz invites Oscar to celebrate her birthday with friends and they go to a bar. On the way, Orzug enters the bar and sees his old friend from the band singing. He is called on stage to sing and dedicates the song to Deniz, wishing him a happy birthday. It just feels like it's the two of them at that bar. Memories of when they were children, mixed with that feeling that didn't let them breathe, intertwined and only made one connection. When they leave the bar, the other friends have left and it's just the two of them, sitting on a bench under a starry night. Oscar asks about how she was born and, as he tells her, says that a man luckily crashed into his mother's car and induced labor. Doctors later discovered that her neck was wrapped around the umbilical cord and if she hadn't had the accident, she wouldn't be alive. Deniz asks him when his birthday is, which makes him laugh. He admits it was the same day as hers, causing her to shift restlessly on the bench and stare at him in surprise. The two laugh and congratulate each other. She asks why he didn't say so and he says he didn't want to steal attention. Deniz smiles and Oscar gets serious, puts his hand on her cheek, caresses and asks where she was all this time. He says he wanted to surprise her. Oscar takes her to the neighborhood where her grandfather used to stay, to the house, to Dad's studio. She looks around, excited. Tears come down from her eyes. Oscar tells her to close her eyes and places the treasure box, that treasure box she had lost, in her hand. Deniz's eyes widen and more tears stream down her face. She doesn't know what to say and just hugs him. The two face each other, eye to eye, soul to soul, and Oscar asks him not to cry. His hands go to Deniz's hair and slowly, little by little, their lips stick together. They kiss and wake up connected, hugging each other. Burak calls Deniz in the morning. He says he has something very important to say. Deniz tells Oscar that she had to break up and he tells her that he would support her whatever her decision is. Deniz leaves, and suddenly Oscar starts coughing and experiencing chest pains and almost falls. Oscar, in a flashback, tells his parents that he was asked to play in Istanbul. His parents say he wasn't well, that he was sick. Oscar says he spent a lot of time in hospitals and that he wanted to experience life. His father gets angry, saying that they always worried about him and that the life Oscar wanted was not suitable. that he should have security. It says that if he walked out of that door, Oscar would cease to exist for him. Oscar does not hesitate and leaves. The story goes back to Deniz remembering when he moved from Ankara to Istanbul. His mother had become agitated and said goodbye to her several times. It was on the train that she met Burak. Burak arrives to find Deniz. She was nervous, uncomfortable, and nearly flinched when he kissed her. She says the two have to talk, but he doesn't let her talk and proposes marriage. Deniz is not happy and says that she cannot marry him, that she was not in love with him. Burak is confused, and she admits that she fell in love with someone else. She says the two of them were wrong for each other. Deniz confronts him, saying that they didn't fall in love. Burak begs for another chance, but she refuses and leaves. Orza goes to the hospital and wants to see Dr. Sem. He remembers when he rebelled and went to Istanbul. It was freezing and he had run to catch the train but had missed it. The effort was too much and he ended up passing out in the middle of the bus station. The doctor explains his cardiovascular problem and that he should avoid a lot of physical exertion. Yilmaz is in the hospital and tries to talk to his son, but Oscar ignores him, nervous about what happened earlier. He would leave for Istanbul to be a photographer, but not like his father, as Yilmaz had made it clear that his son would cease to exist for him. Oscar, when leaving, only says goodbye to his mother. At present, Dr. Sem says that Oscar was not careful and that his health deteriorated a lot. He should be hospitalized immediately. Deniz talks to Zeynep and receives the call from the French film audition response. She had got the part. Orza calls on her, asking if he should tell Deniz about the disease, since he was scared, and the friend says he should. Oscar, at home, listens to a tape of his father. Yilmaz asks for forgiveness. He says he misses him. Oscar can't help the tears that pour down his face. Yilmaz asks Oscar not to abandon those who were important to him. Oscar leaves the store and pulls out the for rent sign. He gets into the car and tries to call Deniz, but she was at the theater. He coughs a lot, it's raining, and he runs to the theater. Deniz was doing the play. He can't stay there, he's coughing too much, and he tries to leave the theater, but he falls in the middle of the sidewalk, in the rain, and passes out. Barak is the one who sees him and takes him to the hospital, barely knowing who he was. Deniz calls him and it is Burak who answers. He doesn't understand for a few minutes, confused, his gears reasoning. But finally, he responds. He says that he was taking Oscar to the hospital. Deniz runs the car to get to the hospital in time. His head is racing. She steps on the accelerator and light catches his attention. The woman is unable to react when a car collides with her and hits her on the driver's side. The two cars crumple, and a crash is heard. Orzig is undergoing surgery and the ambulance takes her to the hospital, all bruised, unconscious, and bloody. She was also going to undergo surgery. Orzig's mother is waiting in the waiting room. Deniz's family arrives, and Insai is almost catatonic with her daughter's condition. The concern for the environment is palpable. The doctor finally arrives for both families. To Oscar's mother, she says he needs a heart soon or he will die. To Deniz's family, he gives condolences. Brain death occurred. Insai cries and sobs. Everyone is in pain, crying. But Insai screams. She is consumed with grief. Her daughter had died. Her little girl had died. Zeynep puts her hands to her head, her face contorted in sheer agony. Not far away, Oscar's mother is worried. She would never find a heart for her son. Insai, Deniz's mother, signs an organ donation consent form. The doctors tell the mother that they found a heart compatible with Oscar's. They'll do the surgery. During surgery, Deniz's spirit kisses Oscar, saying that she was there and that he would get better, then says goodbye. Oscar survives. He survives because of the heart of Deniz, that little girl who jumped in front of his bike. A totally changed Oscar looks at Deniz's diary, at the picture his father took when they were born. The sunset is on the horizon, the guitar is by his side. It was goodbye, but she would always be with him. Her heart was his.
Been spending all your time lifting me up. All of the things I've been worrying seem to be disappearing now, reminding me what days should be made of. Sunshine, betting on a good time. I've been chasing butterflies all afternoon. Night drives, cruising on the highlights, spending all of